How can your organization tell its story in a way so compelling that it attracts people to your vision? Being able to do this can open doors to resources for your organizations. This can come in the form of volunteers, it can come in the form of funding, it can come in the form of visibility and PR for the organization. But having a clear-cut, well-told story that resonates with people can take your organization to another level. My name is Sarah Marshall, founder of Profound Hope Industries. Profound Hope Industries works with mission-focused nonprofits and businesses to help them use their existing organizational structures to have bigger impact and create change for good. And today I'm going to tell you how to share your story through the lens of my own story. And crafting a good story for your organization is not just a matter of telling a few stories. It needs to come together in a very cohesive way. So for example, my career has been spent in different forms of community development work. So if I were to tell you my personal story, there's various versions in which I could do this. I could say to you, I grew up in Chicago, I have 2 brothers, I was homeschooled for the first 2 years of my life, and tell you that story in a very chronological way. And it may take me a while to get to the point that's relevant to you. Or I could tell you my story this way. I was born with a rare disease called PKU, which made me learn advocacy and the importance of access to needed resources at a very young age. Now, of those 2 versions, which one resonates with my story of working in the social change sector? It's the second one. The story is very brief, it's to the point, but it tells you enough about my history so that you understand why I am working in this particular career and a little bit about my personal experiences that inform my perspective. So let's get into how we can help you help your organization tell its own story better. And in a previous life, I was the executive director of a small community development CDFI credit union in Chicago. I will tell my story through the lens of that organization so you can see a concrete example of how these keys to telling your story can be applied to a real organization. So the first key is, what are some of the unique external circumstances about your organization? Things you don't necessarily have control over, but are different than other locations. The credit union that I ran was located in the uptown neighborhood of Chicago. This neighborhood was a high poverty neighborhood, but it was an urban neighborhood that was poor and mostly white. That is a little bit more unusual than some of the typical stories that are heard about urban poverty. The community was a place where the city concentrated a very high percentage of homeless shelter resources and mental health resources. And then on top of it, the community was located on the lakefront of Chicago and had a very rich history of activism and residents who got involved in some pretty strong community organizing movements. Those factors are unique to that organization. There was not another CDFI credit union around the country who had that specific set of circumstances. Your organization is similarly situated in some way if you take the time to really think about that. The second is, what are some unique things that your organization has done? And following along with this particular example, the credit union that I ran helped to develop a small dollar payday alternative loan in the 1990s. They were looking at ways to help people avoid predatory financing before it was really popular in the industry. And if your organization has been around for any length of time, you have some unique stories. Even if you have programs that are very similar to your competitor or to a peer nonprofit organization, you have some things that you've done that are unique. What are those things? Identify those things. Next, What about the history of your organization? Why was it founded? What was the motivation of the person that created the organization? Whether it's a business, doing work for good, a nonprofit, whatever the organizational structure, what makes that unique? There's a story behind that. Somebody saw a need, whether it was for a product or a service, and decided to fill it. Somebody along the line of your organization had a unique perspective about a gap in the community or in society. Tell that story. The credit union that I ran, its story was that the founder was redlined when she was trying to purchase a home in the community. The bank told her that they would give her a mortgage to move out of the city, but she didn't want to do that. And so she created a cooperative financial institution to help people in the community get mortgages at a time when the bank was denying them. That thread of the story ran throughout the organization and its history. What are those threads within your own organization? And then finally, what are some memorable moments for your organization? Many times, when we think about memorable moments, what comes to mind are the highlight reels or the success stories that we often present in front of funders. But a memorable moment is not necessarily the highlight reel that you want to share with everybody. It might be the moment in your work that really struck a chord with you, that made you feel like this is the reason we're here. This is why we're trying to solve this challenge for people like this particular person. I remember a moment for me as a credit union. We were a financing organization. And I remember one day a credit union member came into the credit union crying because her car was getting repossessed. We had not made her the car loan. She hadn't borrowed with us, but she'd heard an employee give a presentation about the organization's desire to help people build their credit and increase their financial knowledge and excel in their ability to build wealth. And so when she had a problem, that she came to a credit union, a financial institution, a place that people typically don't go, crying because she felt like we could help her. And in that moment, I realized that to do what we do, our members really needed to see us as a safe space. Your organization might have some really challenging stories that are the memorable moments. But those stories might be the examples of the bigger picture problem that you're trying to solve. And that's not to say you need to tell an individual client or borrower or customer's story as part of the story that you tell externally. But that is to say, as you're developing your story, those are key moments that frame what you do as an organization, and you should not overlook those just because they're not the success story, just because they're not the success statistic. They're things that stand out to you and your staff that drive them, that make them do what they're doing. And that drive, that passion for what you're doing is important to other people. That's the thing that other people can get behind. Now, once you've collected these four elements, your unique external circumstances, where you're situated, things that you've done as an organization that are unique, your history, and your memorable moments, now it's time to put them down on paper. Write them out. Start with everything that you have ideated at this point and put them on paper, and then pull those elements together to make them as concise as possible. You want to have a one-sentence version. I told you my one-sentence version of why I'm in social change work at the beginning of this video. You want to have a one-paragraph version. This might be the initial introduction that you present to funders or potential partners. And then you want to have the one-page version. Think about this as your proposal or a mini business plan. When you can tell your organization's story in one sentence, one paragraph, and one page, you know you're close to having a strong organizational story. Once you have this in place, think of it as a first draft. It's not going to necessarily be the final version, but start putting it in front of people and see how they respond Talk about it on social media. See if people get behind it. See what people like. Take it to your funders and partners and ask them for their feedback and continue to refine it. And then, as you do your work, continue to collect those types of stories, write down those moments, and continue to grow your story, because your own story as an organization will always be developing as long as you are in existence. So once you've got your story down, go ahead and use it. Use it to compel people to join you in your work. You're doing important work to solve a problem in your community, and your story needs to be heard. People love data and statistics, but when you combine that with a clear, compelling story, people can get behind you. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe so that we can continue making content to help you create social change and impact your community in the way you want to see.